warm welcome to everyone here today on this rather miserable Melbourne summer's day. I'm thrilled to welcome you all to Woven Song, which is essentially the Australian launch of the first three pieces of Deborah Cheetham's Woven Song series. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we stand today in Emerald Hill, the Yalukit-Willan peoples of the Boon Wurrung Nation, and I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and to all First Nations people present here today. The Emerald Hill precinct has been a traditional ceremonial and meeting ground for many thousands of years, so it's actually very, very fitting that we are having this lovely collaborative event, Woven Song, here today. I'd especially like to welcome Professor Andrea Hull, Chair of the Melbourne Recital Centre, Miss Melissa King, Melbourne Symphony Orchestra, Judith Ryan, National Gallery of Victoria, Frances Alcock, former Chair of the Australian Tapestry Workshop, and we're thrilled to have weavers in the audience today, Sue Batten, Pamela Joyce, Cheryl Thornton and Cresside Collette. Now, the Australian launch of Woven Song simply wouldn't be possible without the extremely generous support of a number of really wonderful people. And on behalf of Short Black Opera and the Australian Tapestry Workshop, I'd like to give our thanks to everybody whose belief in this program has made it possible. The support of extraordinary individuals has made it possible for Pandit Ashis Sengupta, Reison Kuroda and Angela Cortez to travel to Australia to join Deborah Cheetham, Tony Lalich and the musicians from Rubiks Collective, from Plexus and from the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra today. Another lovely element to this collaboration has been Linda Britton's creation of these extraordinary gowns in response to each of the tapestries to whom Deborah's made the compositions. So this amazing collaboration continues to develop in all sorts of interesting areas. And so if you haven't had a chance to see the exhibition in the front gallery, I really encourage you to do so because it's truly, truly beautiful. We'd especially like to thank the Beeson Family Foundation, Creative Victoria, the City of Port Phillip, Atul Sinha, the Coppersmith Hotel, LG Park Wines, Asia TOPA and the Virgin Melbourne Fashion Festival. And I'd also like to extend grateful thanks on behalf of Deborah, Tony and Jessica to the Dara Foundation for its ongoing support of the Woven Song project. For the next three compositions, the next international premieres, which will take place later this year in Rome, in the Holy See, in Paris and in Beijing. Coronavirus notwithstanding. These performances will introduce new partners to the project, Orchestra Victoria, Santa Cecilia Conservatoria and Short Black Opera's One Day in January project. I would like to thank Deborah, Short Black Opera and all the wonderful musicians here today for this opportunity to show how old art forms such as opera, tapestry, shakuhachi and tabla can all come together to tell old stories anew in a very contemporary and exciting way. It's been such a lovely privilege to be part of Woven Song. These are the first three compositions of Deborah's for Singapore, New Delhi and for Tokyo. And I'm really thrilled to point out our 10th Embassy Tapestry, which has just started on the looms. Behind us here, this is destined for Jakarta later this year. So we have 7 extraordinary compositions and performances and gowns by Linda Britton to look forward to. It now gives me very great pleasure to introduce one of Australia's greatest cultural ambassadors, Deborah Cheetham AO, Professor Deborah Cheetham AO. Thank you.
Oh, it's wonderful to see so many familiar faces here today and so many new friends as well. We live on extraordinary country. We live, if you're in this particular area, and the Australian Tapestry Workshop is, on Bunurong country. And the Bunurong people have been singing and dancing, painting and narrating their story for something like 2,000 generations on this land. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that magnificent buildings such as this that came along much later than the Bunurong's history, they were built on this land and drew a particular energy from it. And they've thrived because there's so much knowledge in this land, so much strength and wisdom of the lived experience. And the culture of the Bunurong and of the indigenous nations of this continent, the way of knowing was through the arts, through the song and the dance and the painting. And what an incredible world we would be living in right now if that was the way things were still valued, yes? I don't think the arts would have been relegated on the last sitting of Parliament in a Bunurong governance system. No, the arts are central to our way of knowing. In 2017, and Antonia and I were reminiscing that it was very early in the year, Short Black Opera had moved just around the corner to South Melbourne Town Hall, our temporary digs. But so glad was I that we ended up in Emerald Hill, as it's known, because the Emerald Hill arts organisations all gathered very early in the year to celebrate the 40th anniversary of the Australian Tapestry Workshop. Some of you will remember this workshop when it was the Victorian Tapestry Workshop, and a long history of making some of the finest tapestries in the world, and great works of art they are. When I discovered the Embassy Tapestry collection, at that time 9 tapestries, I instantly wanted to compose a response to each one, because I felt those tapestries were singing to me, just from the pages of a book at that point in time, the 40th anniversary book. I think Many Hands, I want to call that, yes. If you don't have that book, I think you can purchase it from ATW, but it's worth a look in any case. And so I expressed this dream, this desire to Antonia, who I really had only just met properly at that time, and said, look, I need to write a response to these tapestries. They're so magnificent. I want to know about the stories of the original paintings, the artists who painted each and every one of the artworks that the tapestries are based on. Tell me more about it. And so we got into a conversation. But straight away, Antonia saw that this was a project of merit and encouraged me at every turn to pursue this dream. And so now there are 3 compositions with a 4th in a very healthy state, much healthier than the conversation around certain viruses that are distracting us from other matters in the world. But the Beijing composition is well and truly underway, and also the composition for Paris. And later in the year, I'll be working on the Holy See and Rome, as Antonia mentioned. But these first 3 all happen to take place in our neighbourhood, beginning with Singapore. Thanks to the generosity of one of Short Black Opera's patrons, we're in our 11th year now, and we have some very dear patrons who make it possible for us to exist, quite frankly. And one of them lives in Singapore, Mr. Atul Sinha. And he had expressed to me a number of years ago that Short Black Opera deserved to have an international footprint as a company, and set up a recital series at the beautiful Esplanade Theatres. I'm sure some of you have been there. And at that time we met the wonderful Angela Cortez, beautiful mezzo-soprano, and we began performing together in Singapore. And the next opportunity to perform there coincided with the creation of this first work you're about to hear, Catching Breath. Catching Breath takes its title from the original artwork by Brooke Andrew, a Wiradjuri artist. And I'm distracted now because I'm looking at the board. You can all turn around there. Right there you'll see the monochrome image, a large ear and then a man, a very muscular man, with his face sheathed. That was a game changer, that sheath, because tapestries, as magnificent as they are, don't normally have additional auxiliary parts of the artwork that hang over the main artwork, and new techniques were developed to recreate this work. What Brooke Andrew achieved in Catching Breath was this. He took a photograph taken around 1900 in Armidale, northern New South Wales. And now, as you'd know, northern New South Wales has an area which is known as New England because it was so beautiful and green. When the colonisers arrived, they recognised straight away the lush green countryside. The same countryside that the Gumbaynggirr and the Anawan had known for tens of thousands of years. And they called it New England. But this photograph of this warrior was taken in 1900. And on the back of the photograph that's in the collection of Brooke Andrew, on the back of that photograph is a stamp. It simply says, Cunningham, 1900 Armidale. Cunningham being the name of the photographer and the identifying date and location. The name of this warrior, this initiated man, if you get up close to the replica print in the front gallery after this concert, you'll see the scars of initiation across his chest. This is a man who's a leader in his community. His name would have been well known, would have been spoken daily by many, perhaps thousands. He has no name. And what Brooke Andrew has highlighted here is what I consider to be humanity's greatest flaw, really. And that is our ability to deconstruct our humanity and create the undifferentiated other. Them, they, the nameless ones, the generic. This is what allows the greatest atrocities to take place. This is what allowed a great atrocity to take place on this continent. And Brooke Andrew has captured this moment, has taken away the identity of this warrior even further, because we can't see his face, except for two piercing eye holes. It's a very confronting work of art. It moves you instantly. It moved our current High Commissioner in Singapore to actually remove the tapestry and place it somewhere that wasn't quite in his living space because it so confronted him. You know, art is subjective. It must be. Whilst that's not exactly the purpose of the tapestries, they are there to represent our country, to say something to our international partners and people who come to the embassies and the residences. It speaks to the strength of the piece, I think. And so this first composition I wrote mainly when I was in Western Australia, actually. I was in the Pilbara performing in a concert series there. At the time, my sister-in-law was very ill and cancer claimed her life before we could give the premiere of this work. My partner in music and life at the piano, Tony, in that state of grief that only a sibling can know, travelled still with me to Singapore to give the premiere of this work. And we commented earlier this week that neither of us can really remember what that concert was because we were still so grieving for a loss. I think Australia grieves for a loss of its identity, the identity that Australia may have had if there had been a mutual respect at the beginning of that colonising process. There's an identity that non-Indigenous Australians, I believe, yearn for, try to replace it with lots of different things. And many people are coming to the realisation that the only true thing that can take the place, can fill that gap, that hole that we have in our lives is to connect with the longest continuing culture in the world. The best way I know to help people connect and to maintain my own connection is through music. It is the carrier of all knowledge for the First Nations people of this land. And that's why I've invited some very, very dear friends and special guests to join me on stage today. This incredible quartet brought together by Monica Kuro, who you'll see in our final piece as well, with Merwin and Molly and Liz, finding the beauty of New England and the grittiness and the disappointment and the anguish of the loss of identity. The piano binding us together in that percussive and beautiful way that it can. But on stage, to sing the demand that we know this man's name. I'm joined by, and if you would give her a very special welcome all the way from Singapore, our mezzo-soprano, Angela Cortez. Steve Hodgson, who is one of the finest early music experts I know and leader of Consort of Melbourne, our baritone. And as I mentioned earlier, Short Black Opera celebrated its 10th year last year, 11 now, and it couldn't have happened had we not had foundation members of our company, Wemba Wemba tenor, Zoy Frangos. So I think one of the things that I wanted to achieve with that piece is the sense of frustration that I feel we all must share as Australians. The sense of frustration of not knowing, not having been taught, not having been told. Of course, there's no way on earth we could ever defend the position that, well, I didn't learn it in school, therefore I can't possibly know it. But it does certainly help when education is thorough and rigorous and truthful and accurate right from the very beginning. As we know, unlearning is very hard. And I think Australia's been in a process of unlearning, and there's a real tussle about what's to be known and what's not to be known right now. We'll win because art will remain. Art is the constant. And you only have to look at a place like this to know. This has such a great provenance, this building, and please, Antonia is much better at talking about it than I am. So if you're able to have a moment with her, if you don't know the history of this building, do ask, because it's fascinating. My name, speak my name. How often have we seen our leaders, our politicians stumble and not pronounce an Indigenous name because of fear of getting it wrong? And perhaps you've felt that way too. And really just have a think about the first time you ever saw the word macchiato. You probably had to practice it a few times before you were willing to take on your favourite barista, right? Just practice it. Find out. Ask someone if you don't know. For many years before I was a soprano, and many more years before I ever could call myself a composer, I was a teacher. And the first lesson that I would give to any class, any group of students, no matter what age, was do not be fearful or shamed by the fact that you don't know something. Not knowing is not a problem. Having a lack of curiosity or not bothering to find out, that's the problem. But never be afraid or ashamed that you don't know something. It's a really empowering thing to say, well, it's okay not to know, but it's not okay not to find out. They're two different things. These compositions are designed to be pieces of music, to be listened to, enjoyed, challenged by. But they're also there as a guide, a way in to something perhaps that seems very remote from us. If you think about the communities where this next original artwork by Nanyuma Napangadi, if you think about where these artworks originated, or this artwork in particular, it's untitled, but it is a ceremonial story of women's ceremony gathering around rock holes, the journey through the desert to get there, the collection of bush plums and tomatoes. When you think about where this community is, we are so remote here in Melbourne from that community. And I'm very deliberately saying that we are remote because so often we say, oh, the remote communities, remote Australia. It's not remote to the people who've lived there for 40, 50, 60, 70, 80,000 years. They don't orbit around us. They are the centre of their own universe. So we're very remote from there. But if you wanted to go to Kiwakara or Kintore, and perhaps you have, and if you want to take the journey on the ground, then you would have to fly to Alice Springs, hire your four-wheel drive, and then drive west for 19 hours, and you still wouldn't reach the border with Western Australia, to give you a sense of what journey means in that kind of country. This particular composition derives a text from the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights. Now, in Kintore, Kiwakara, these two communities, the Pintubi people, the speakers of that language, they're about 2,000 still. 2,000 sounds like a lot, but, you know, languages do hang by a very fine thread. And so it was quite a miracle to know that the Declaration of Human Rights had been translated into Pintupi. And as I was reading the Declaration of Human Rights in English, I came across Article 27, which states that everyone should be free to express their culture and participate in the culture of their community. Well, Nanyama was certainly doing that when she painted the original painting from which the tapestry is derived. But further than that, it actually states in Article 27 that everyone should have the right to benefit from advances in science. Now, the reason Nanyama painted this painting, and I'm looking at the print on the wall, I have the advantage, I can see out into the gallery there. The reason that Nanyama painted this work was so that it might be auctioned to raise funds for kidney dialysis machines. The Western diet being so horribly out of step with the nutritional diet of the traditional diet of the people of that community. There it was in Article 27 of the Declaration of Human Rights. And more than this, there it was translated into Nanyama's language. How fabulous. All we had to do was go to India and give the world premiere. And we couldn't do that unless we found the most exceptional musician, and we did, thanks to the Australian High Commissioner, who connected us with our international guest for Article 27, Pandit Ashis Sengupta. Ashis and the members of Rubiks Collective, Tamara Kohler and Kaylee Melville, founding directors, and their guest, long-time guest now of Rubiks Collective, Natasha Fernside, and my partner in music and life again at the piano, Tony. We gave this premiere last year in the Royal Opera House of Mumbai, actually. And after this wonderful occasion, which was just such an amazing way to begin our tour, our performances in India, we travelled to New Delhi where the Australian High Commission is, and there we gave a wonderful outdoor concert. There was an additional instrument which was added to the piece for that special occasion. It was a peacock who called out every single time I sang a B flat. We have it in recording in the documentary we made. And later on, the American embassy across the road were having a karaoke party. But apart from that, the evening was a splendid one after the rain cleared, and we gave the world premiere of this in the country that the tapestry now resides. So important part, such an important part of this project. These tapestries, these works of art, they speak for us in our embassies in 9 different places around the world, and as Antonia pointed out, in a 10th shortly. This magnificent work by Naomi Hodgson is on the loom as we speak, and we'll be heading to our embassy in Jakarta eventually. And so I'll compose a 10th piece for that work. They represent us. They say something to the world about us. And increasingly, there's an interest and a knowledge gathering out there internationally about the longest continuing culture in the world. We need to make sure as Australians we keep up with that interest and that knowledge, lest we look foolish on the international stage. And this piece takes us on Nanyama's journey, that long journey through the sand hills to the rock holes where the women are gathered. They sing their songs, they pass on their knowledge to the younger generations. And you'll hear all of that in very subtle tones to begin with, so do make sure your phones are off. Bass flute is a very particular thing. I'm so proud that Tamara Kohler, I have to tell you, I didn't tell people last night, she's actually my daughter, is such a fine flautist. And bass flute is one of those really miraculous instruments that it's such a unique colour. You'll hear it right at the very beginning. So please enjoy Article 27. I will just tell you one other thing. Are you happy to tune while I'm talking? Is that okay? Some things can't be translated directly from English into the many, many Indigenous languages. And it was so with Article 27, which, as I said before, everyone has the right freely to participate in the cultural life of the community, to enjoy the arts and to share in scientific advancement and its benefits. In Pintupi, the elders took the opportunity to say more about it. And so the actual translation that I'm singing, people in one place or area should learn about their own dreamings. And it's good for them to gather together with others, whilst the work boss, the government or the police should not prevent that. They should leave them alone without scolding them. So there they've articulated what is necessary to participate in your culture. You can't just say, oh, go and participate in your culture. Some of these things need to be absent from the picture in order to achieve that. And they've said it here. Aboriginal women, of course they wouldn't have used the word Aboriginal women, the women, the Yananu, should learn more about their own dreamings and should gather together and follow their grandmother's dreaming. A very important distinction there in translation, nothing lost. Everybody happy with tunes? As you know, opera is the ultimate coming together of all of the great art forms, not only music, but costume, drama, sets. When I first thought about the scope of the Woven Song Embassy Tapestry project, of course, there were the 9 compositions to respond to the 9 tapestries, the 9 original artworks. But when you are a soprano, the lasting impression that you often make is, of course, what you are wearing. That can be for good or for ill sometimes. I was very fortunate about a decade or so ago to work with Linda Britton for the very first time. In fact, she created a gown for me. We call it Big Red. You may have seen this photo. I've been using it probably for as long as I actually can. I don't want to become one of those artists who keeps their biopic from 30 years ago. But Big Red was created for the opening of the new wing of the Indigenous wing of the National Gallery in Canberra. That was the first time that I encountered the work of Linda Britton. We hadn't met at that stage. The dress arrived in a bag, and then I needed to find a way of being laced into it. But for this project, I was determined that Linda and I should work together on her response to each of the tapestries, her response to the music and the stories behind the original artworks, and that she should create gowns which respond to each of the works, so that for the world premieres, I would wear a gown that is in harmony, is in relationship with the tapestry, so that these artistic practices would not be siloed as they are in our Western way of teaching the arts. In traditional practice, the singer can be the painter, the storyteller, the dancer. Yeah? But certainly all of these are arts combined for ceremony. And so Linda has created so far 3 gowns. The one for Beijing is on the mannequin at the moment, and it is exquisite. I cannot wait to wear it. It has, I'm not going to tell you what it has. It's a secret. You have to wait. But after the performance, if you have the time to go into the gallery, there's also a short documentary. You might not want to see all of it. It's 20 minutes long, but it's a documentary about catching breath, about the first work that we performed. And that is available on YouTube as well. And that dress was created by Linda without a single fitting. I wasn't able to go home. We were in Perth, and as you know, we had sorry business to attend to. So Linda made that without one single fitting and brought it to Singapore the night before the performance, and that was our dress rehearsal, quite literally rehearsing that dress. And luckily everything, not luckily, through her skill, everything did fit perfectly. So there are gowns that have been created, and the wonderful gown that's created to respond to Daisy Andrews' masterpiece, Lumpur Lumpur Country, is probably one of the most exquisite dresses you'll ever see, and you'll see it in the gallery. I called this composition My Mother's Country. You know, yesterday, or actually 2 days ago, we celebrated, well, celebrated isn't the right word, we marked the anniversary of the apology to the stolen generations. And I'm sorry to have to tell you that children are being taken in greater numbers now than they were in the 50s and 60s. I was taken from my mother at 3 weeks of age in 1964. She had no rights to get me back, and it was not until my mid-20s that I met her, and not until my 30s that I formed a relationship with my Aboriginal family. And not until I actually moved to Victoria did I meet my extended family and know my belonging, which is Yorta Yorta, from up on the Dungala, more recently called the Murray, in Shepparton through to Moama. Now that journey for me to know my mother's country, Yorta Yorta country, is a very long one. But not as long as Daisy Andrews. Her grandparents' generation were murdered in great number by stockmen who wanted to create the Canning stock route. Let's just get rid of the blacks. That makes everything simpler. And they were murdered in great number. You'll find other words to describe that. Displaced, removed, sanitised. So Daisy didn't grow up on her country. But her parents told her about it, and she could dream it. And her elders said to her, you must go back to your country, you must see it. And she did go back. And she painted it, and she paints it with great beauty and affection. It's so, so very lovely. It's actually the image on the front of today's program. And you see that red and you say, yes, I know that red. That's the red of the red centre. That's true. But it's also the blood that was shed into that land for Daisy. And she was very sad that she'd lived almost her entire life. She said in one quote that I read, I have grey hair now and I'm visiting this country. I should have been here as a child learning this language. So she was grieving for that. In that grief, though, this incredible, incredible painting and the tapestry, which resides in the Australian Embassy in Tokyo. And I'm very pleased to say that the Ambassador, Richard Court, was so supportive in the premiere of this work taking place in the embassy. And his wonderful team, particularly Hitomi, who is a wonderful, wonderful ambassador, made a relationship form that is going to last for the rest of my musical life. And that is with our shakuhachi master, Reison Kuroda. Please make him welcome. Now, I can't learn every instrument that I write for, but as a one-time flautist, that's how I started life, I thought, I'm going to take some shakuhachi lessons because I'm going to write for shakuhachi. I know nothing about writing for it. I'll take some lessons. It must have taken me 2 weeks to make my first sound, which was a really zen moment. I felt like I've finally arrived somewhere. Or am I hallucinating because I was so hyperventilated by that point? It is such an incredible instrument to master, putting aside oneself and centering the breath in a way that was quite foreign to the technique I'd learned from my flute masters here. But when it's in the hands of a master, like Reison, you understand how it can speak. And it speaks the voice and the connection to that country that Daisy paints so eloquently. Was very, very fortunate when I came to Melbourne to find a musical community that was so welcoming and open and embraced myself as a Sydney-sider 14 years ago, and some of the dearest friends that I've made are from the Plexus Collective of Stefan Casamenos at the piano, Monica Kuro and Phil Arkenstall. Please make them welcome as well. We travelled to Japan and gave the premiere of this work. I just will read to you the poem that I wrote to set to the Walmajari language. Last night I had a dream. My grandmother, my mother, I heard them crying. I dreamed a love song for my mother's country. Last night I dreamed once more. I'm going on a journey far from this place. I waited for you. We will go together. We will dream a love song for my mother's country.
you.